Hey, thanks for joining us for the Hemi-Sync podcast. We're joined today by Jonathan Hammond. Jonathan is a Maui-based author, spiritual teacher, energy healer, shamanic practitioner, and spiritual counselor. He's a graduate of Harvard University and the University of Michigan. Jonathan is a certified master teacher in shamanic Reiki, Usui, and Kahuna Reiki. He's on the Advanced Graduate Studies Advisor for Shamanic Reiki Worldwide and an ordained Alakai teacher guide in the Kahili Hawaiian Shamanic tradition. Jonathan has completed 4 years of training in interspirituality and interspiritual counseling at the One Spirit Learning Alliance. He was ordained as an interfaith minister in 2008. He has training and certifications in Cherokee bodywork with the Coyote Institute, Huna, Hawaiian Shamanism with Aloha International, and all core curriculum with the Foundation of Shamanic Studies. Jonathan has been initiated through the Minoan Fellowship in Wicca and is trained in the therapeutic facilitation of psychedelics with Inward Bound in Ireland. In addition to maintaining a robust private practice, Jonathan teaches classes in shamanism, energy healing, Reiki, Huna, and Ho'oponopono at the Omega Institute for Holistic Studies, the One Spirit Learning Alliance, and Shamanic Reiki Worldwide. Jonathan lives on Maui and is in private practice in Kihei, Hawaii, and online. Here is Jonathan Hammond. John, welcome to the Hemi-Sync podcast. Thanks for joining us. So there are many different types of shamanism. Hemi-Sync has produced many different albums which relate to the topic. I've personally done more than a few podcasts on the subject. So can you just tell us a bit about your own personal or particular brand of shamanism? Not personal, but the brand that you practice.
Well, there are different versions, different teachers and all of that. Ultimately, it is a return to nature. That's the main thing. It's about nature as a template to teach us about ourselves. When you think of humans, we're actually the children on this earth, and the nature beings, the plant people, the stone people, the animal people have been around a lot longer than we have, and humans have the unique ability as children to think that they can become something other than themselves. Think that they can become something different. They can live in mentally constructed world rather than the reality of the here and now, and rather than living from our own essence, in the same way that the shark only wants to be itself or the daisy only knows how to be itself. We have this unique ability and difficult tendency to become something other. So it's about looking to nature. So when I think of shamanism, it's about looking to nature to remind us to not do that, to stay, to find our own true essence. In the same way that when we look at nature, everything is of itself. It can only be a spontaneous and unapologetic expression of itself. And we as humans are trying to do that too. And when we do, we get a lot of help from the upper world spirits, and we find a kind of flow, because we are flowing with living from an essence of what the earth intended us to be. So that's what I mean by shamanism, I think.
Cool. And so I think people think of kind of a few major branches of shamanism. Probably most prominently here in the States is the Native American tradition, but there's also a very active Asian tradition. And yours is mostly based on Hawaiian shamanism, correct? I mean, you actually live in Maui, and
I live in Maui. Yeah. Someone's got to do it, Garrett.
Yeah, tough life.
Yeah,
tough assignment.
But I landed on Hawaiian after I had worked with shamans on 3 different continents and studied a lot of different teachers and different traditions. And a couple things that I saw, which was that there really was a universal shamanic paradigm in whether or not I was in Bali, whether or not it was in Brazil, whether or not it was Native American shamans. That was very much clear. But the thing about the Hawaiian piece was that the Hawaiians had a very psychological aspect to their indigenous teachings, which I really liked, because I'm a bit of a that's the work that I do, and I'm a bit of a psychological nerd, and to find an earth-based tradition that was mirroring so much of what we understand about contemporary psychology and transpersonal psychology in particular was really exciting. And that really did come from the Hawaiian tradition.
Cool. And so there are quite a few terms that we kind of toss around casually, or, Hawaiian terms that we toss around casually as mainlanders. But let's just start with the most probably common one of all, aloha. Can you talk a bit about what that means?
Yeah.
And especially in the context of shamanism.
Yeah. So aloha there are two different syllables that you can look at. Alo, which means to share, and ha, which means breath, or oha, which means joy. So aloha is to share life, to share breath, to share joy with another. So when we say aloha, it is or when we live in aloha, it is a connecting energy. It is, which is of course what the essence of love is. And another concept in Hawaii is a concept called malama ka'aina, which means to love the land as you would love a sibling or a parent. So the idea being that and Hawaiians really do feel this. So imagine being somewhere, living somewhere where you say, I love this place so much. And with that fullness and I love this land, and I'm so grateful and humble to be here. And to walk on this land is such an honor. And then to say aloha to someone, that it's really coming from that place. So that's aloha. Aloha brings things together. It connects. It's a connector, just like love is.
See, I think lots of folks think that aloha just means hello or goodbye, but it means so much more than that. And that is a common thread that you find throughout all Hawaiian terms, including the word Hawaii itself, right?
Right. Hawaii, ha, which means breath or life force, vai, which means water, and I, which means the supreme. So it is where where breath and water and life come together. That's what that means. Yeah, the Hawaiian language is really fascinating. I'm certainly not a scholar on it, but it's fascinating in that everything in it, every syllable in it contains multiple meanings, and everything you can think of as a kind of verb, which means that it has this lived quality, just like the nature of reality itself. Everything is almost a gerund. So it's Hawaii-ing, so to speak. It's that energy, or aloha-ing, it's that energy. It moves, it has movement in it. Yeah.
And I think this kind of underscores the importance of language, just in culture and in mindset. And as part of that, it really highlights how spirituality in Hawaiian culture is a serious practice. It's an entire lifestyle. It permeates the culture. Whereas, on the mainland or in Western society in general, it's kind of more of a hobby, isn't it?
Yeah, and honestly, if I had to be honest, I'd say it's more of a hobby here too. I think
okay, fair enough.
Meaning that I think that this place it has really been colonized, and I think that, and I've seen this in other indigenous cultures that I've worked with and that I've studied, and a lot of the anthropological material talks about this too. Is that a lot of these cultures, they now want cell phones and they want fancy cars and they want the things that the modern amenities that make life easier, and so a lot of times it's the students of these indigenous cultures that actually help keep it going in some way. It's pretty audacious for a Caucasian guy to write a book on Hawaiian spirituality. And what I found is that the Hawaiians, who are now my friends, I live among them. I literally live in a community where I'm not with just the rich white people, down the street. I live with those people. And what I found more than anything else is that the Hawaiians say, "Wow, you care enough to invest in us," and that's not something that you see very often. So yeah, and I think that living a true spiritual life, is more than anything else the confrontation of our own compartmentalization of living a spiritual life. So it is about taking it way past hobby. Mm-hmm. Into every action that we take and every breath that we breathe.
And part of doing that, or really the essence of doing that, is this concept of Huna, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of what's been lost in treating, Hawaiian shamanism or spirituality in general as a hobby. Can you tell us about Huna and what it means?
Yeah, so Huna, the Huna that I know, the Huna means secret. That's the essence of that word. But a secret not being something withheld, but something that is difficult to see, like fine sea spray or dust, something that's there but it's hard to see. Which of course is the essence of any esoteric wisdom. It's what's underneath. It's what's underneath the explicate reality or the outward reality. So Huna is a philosophy, a spiritual philosophy made up of a bunch of things, but certainly 7 ideas that help us align with the nature of the unconscious mind, that the nature of love, the nature of the present moment, the nature of how energy works, and they're very simple ideas. But when you learn them and you adhere to them, they open you into a shamanic cosmological viewpoint. And way of seeing the world that puts you in flow with what we were talking about earlier, which was being more like nature and learning how we use the power of our own minds and our own intentions and our own actions to consciously create our life and evolve appropriately and evolve in a way that we were meant to evolve. The sense of, we're wired toward our own creative evolution. We can feel it. When you take an action that feels right and good and growthful, you can feel it. There's a felt sense to it. And when you do it the other way, there's a sense that it doesn't feel right. So we are wired toward that. And Huna helps us align our mind in congruence with that.
So how do we open to that more fully? We all kind of have our own history, our own patterning, our own limitations. How do we open to that as part of serious spiritual practice?
Well, I would say the main thing is, what are you thinking about? What are you habitually laying your consciousness on? If you think of awareness as a screen of reality, and that reality shifts and changes based on what you project onto it. So in other words, the outward reality is simply a reflection of the inward reality, and you will create in your outward reality a reflection or a mirror of what your inward reality is. Or another way to say it is that the waking dream is simply a reflection of the inward dream. What are you thinking about? Where are you laying your consciousness? What are you? It's that, and love begets love, fear begets fear, the hatred begets hatred, hope begets hope, believing that you can begets believing what you can in the outward world.
Yeah.
So it really is about like really being conscious. That's what inner work really is. What am I doing? What's going on? Oh, there's a thought form. Do I want to take it up? Do I want to sit it inside me and see through its eyes? No, it's not going to get me where I want to go. I see you there. You're my wounds. You're my habits. You're my parents. My parents' programming. But I'm not going to take you up because I'm going this way.
So
another way to say it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So just a couple interesting concepts that I heard in there. So the first is that, there's this idea that consciousness is really what is primary. Consciousness is defined by our thoughts, by our feelings. And then the second interesting thing that I heard in there was this concept of dreaming, the inward dream, the outward dream, but they're both dreams.
Yeah. If you think of a sleeping dream, the easiest way to understand a sleeping dream is that everything in the sleeping dream is a reflection of something about you. That's the easiest way to begin to understand or interpret a sleeping dream. So if you think of the waking dream and everything that happens and that you see and all the cast of characters in your waking dream as symbols or dream characters of your inward dream, or as a reflection of something about you in the same way, that's really great information. So that means that in your outward dream, if you're not getting what you want, there is some sort of congruency or sympathetic vibration inwardly with whatever you're getting in the outward dream. So that's just a way to think of it.
And so maybe let's talk a bit about how Hawaiian shamanism works. So here's another term that we hear quite a bit in pop culture, the idea of the kahuna. So what's a kahuna?
Well, Kahuna is a Hawaiian version of another word that is now used cross culturally, which is the word shaman. And shaman is a healer of what? A healer of relationships. The relationship we have between our mind and our body, the relationship we have between ourselves and others, the relationship that others have with others, and the relationship that we all have with the earth. And so that's what a shaman is, and a kahuna is and in the Hawaiian tradition there are all different kinds of kahunas. The kahuna that we're talking about, which is the spiritual and sometimes often medicinal healer, but then there are different kind of kahunas as well. Any in the Hawaiian tradition, any master of any trade would be considered kahuna. So there are kahuna canoe makers, and there are kahuna herbalists, and there and the big kahuna on the beach that is the surfer, the kahuna heinalu, that is the master surfer. The master wave slider is actually that translation. Yeah.
Oh, so in the context of shamanism, then. What does the kahuna teach? Like, for instance, is there a concept that would be similar to the idea of enlightenment within Hawaiian shamanism?
The thing about enlightenment is, the enlightenment in any shamanism, I think, would be about a unitive consciousness, that we really do live in a completely interdependent and interconnected reality. And when you go into nature, that's very clear. You can sort of see how all things work together, and we're like that too. In terms of a unitive consciousness that is where there's where you just are sitting in the non-dual reality, there's not much to do there.
Yeah.
And it's a nice place to visit, but you can't really enjoy chocolate or have a girlfriend or that sort of thing. So so when I think of enlightenment, I think of love in the present moment, with an awareness that I'm connected to the all. We tend to be simple in shamanism. So
yeah, no, that's beautiful. So just in case this isn't fully landing with folks, how would you describe the feeling of living from this connected place, like as a practical matter? Like, what are the hallmarks of your everyday living if you're in tune with this?
A sense that everything matters, that everything counts, that everything is sacred. And I don't mean that I don't have aversions to things, or that I don't experience myself as a separate self. But when you think of contemporary society, we only think of ourselves. The left brain is very predominant. So with the left brain being the analytical, the separate. Right. And indigenous cultures had a real balance between left brain and right brain. And right brain is the holistic, the imaginative, the intuitive. And so it's more about being centered in those things. I often talk about the medial consciousness, or the fifth dimensional consciousness of the shaman, or the healer, or the minister, or the wise person. And that is where we sit in the middle, and we pull ourselves away from the polarized culture: good, bad, black, white, Trump, Biden, Democrat, Republican, vax, unvax, and we sort of allow ourselves to sit in the bigger perspective and say, on some level, it all counts. It's all supposed to be there. It's all part of great spirit. It all matters. And to hold that in that medial position, it's that. And in there you find that's where flow resides, and that's where a different kind of wisdom lives.
Right. So I think you just kind of touched on it right there. Flow. You're describing a flow state. So the analytical mind is kind of turned down, and you're really just kind of observing, holding experience, moving with experience.
And really, it's about, it's Joseph Campbell. It really is following what is pleasurable, following your bliss, the bliss that comes without a hangover, but following that, and avoiding that which doesn't feel good. And because that's what nature is doing. That's exactly what nature is doing. You know,
Yeah.
nature takes for itself, and nature advocates for itself, and nature knows it's also connected to the all, and nature wants to realize its potential,
Yeah.
And to be in that place, and to hold that intentionality for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to enter you into the same flow that nature is doing.
Mm-hmm. It sounds so simple and blissful to enter into flow. What do you think are some of the common challenges or obstacles that you see people encountering?
Well, there's a personal one and a sort of a sociological one. The personal
Yeah.
one is if you have a thought that does not have growth or creation or evolution in it,
Hmm.
it's not a true thought. It's
Hmm.
not a true thought, because that's not the nature of reality, and that's not the nature of nature. So the first thing personally is just to look at those habitual thoughts that have no growth, that have no creation, that just enter you into a kind of bleak stuckness. They're
Yeah.
not a true thought. There's another way. That's the first thing. And
Yeah.
the second thing is to turn down the volume on the overculture, which
Mm-hmm.
has a vested interest in you not following your nature, who has a vested interest in you not being spiritual, who want very much to enslave you, you know, to lend your soul and your spirit to someone else, to a job, to an idea, to a fitting in, to a keeping up with the Joneses, to a story, to, you know, and to turn down the volume on that and come back to your own nature and say, I see you there. I'm going to live alongside the overculture, you know, but I'm not submitting to what to the fact that I was born into it and the expectations and assumptions that I will assimilate to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the work.
And so in this context, it sounds like when you say, that's not true, or you reference true thought, you're actually referring to true in the sense that it's not egoic. It's derived from source or from gnosis, am I kind of getting that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just that we are everything. We are supposed to be evolving. We are supposed to be creating ourselves further. We are supposed to be following that inner essence to realize potential.
Yeah.
And when we adhere to those thought forms that say you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not rich enough, you're not something, you don't look right, whatever those things are, those things don't have any essence of growth and creation in them.
Gotcha.
And in that way, they're not even real.
And you talk about fear as being kind of the primary factor that keeps us locked into these fixed mindsets, these rigid ideas of conformity, of having to fit in, of keeping up with the Joneses. How do you kind of work with that? How do you work with fear?
Well, the thing I don't understand about contemporary psychology is that faith isn't really a thing. It's not one of their tools, which is very strange to me, because the only way to traverse, going from here to here, is through the faith that it's going to work out. You know, the faith that it's worth the risk. Anything new, anything that is creative, is going to have inherent risk, and there's going to be doubt. And when you've examined it and you know that it's right for you, then it's about mitigating the fear through faith. And that's all we have. That's all we have. So, and if you think of the nature of courage, what is that? That's moving forward despite the fear. That's what courage is, you know. And so that's our work to do. That's our work to do.
So, in your writings, you defined fear in a way that I thought was pretty interesting, and I'm not sure that I've seen before, but you described it as an adverse reaction to a possible future state of permanent stuckness.
Did I say that? I did say that.
Yeah.
That's right. And again, that's the thought form. That's the thought form that has no movement in it. Permanent stuckness, you know, that I'm going to find myself somewhere with no way out. And usually not only with no way out, but where everyone's going to laugh at me. You know, Teresa of Avila, a great Catholic mystic, she talked about that the reason why we don't follow the spiritual path or follow our own growth or make choices towards our development that feel spiritually guided is because of the fear of humiliation. Which I think is such an interesting way to say it. That if I follow that, if I think of myself as more than what I am, I might be humiliated.
Mm.
And I think that's something to look at in your own process or in a therapeutic process.
And so when you talk about faith as being the way out, you're really talking about faith in the idea that it's going to be okay then. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. If so a very a sort of shamanic conception of the universe is that we have a seed, we are a seed, and in that seed contains all the programming that will lead towards our growth, development, our interconnection with the all, our realizing our potential, and that there is light or an angel or the sky father or the spiritual energies that stand over that seed and say grow, keep going. And so we're made of both. If you think of the Big Bang, we essentially we're here on Earth and we are of the mother, but we are also of the sky. We are also part of that star material or that heavenly essence. And so if we're following our Earth evolution and our Earth growth and our Earth programming, as well as the heavenly evolution that says I will help. I will help you. I will organize things. I will inspire. I will create relationships so that you can do that.
All right. Well, so cool. So this takes me into a topic that I wanted to cover with you then. So people always want to know, okay, well, tell me about the goodies. So how do we kind of use this to manifest things that we want, things in our life that serve us well?
Well, one of the first principles of Huna says that the world is what you think it is, meaning that the world becomes what you're thinking about. So I'll give you an example. So I'm a blue collar boy from Michigan, and I live on Maui. This is not. I didn't just waltz over here. And if you don't think that I traversed my own doubt and fear around that process, I most certainly did. As I was thinking, I was enraptured with Hawaii, but I didn't know how to get here. And I began to watch a show on HGTV called Hawaii Life, and there are 19 seasons of that show, and it's watching people buy property in Hawaii.
I've seen that show.
And I watched every episode, and I watched them more than once. And I watched them more than once, and I watched people being told what the price is and buying it and moving to Hawaii. And then when I got bored with that show after watching every season 3 times, I started beach hunt, bargain front, and bargain hunt, and that was just to keep it beachy because I wanted
seen that too.
And then I wrote a book on Hawaii, and then which took a year and lent my consciousness to Hawaii. And then when I would come here and visit, I would go to open houses, and I would allow myself to imagine, and I would allow myself to and it was through all of that, because the other principles in Huna, the third principle of Huna, a Hawaiian word called Makia, is translated energy flows where our attention goes. So the creative energies of the universe are invited in through what we're placing our focus and attention on. So in terms of manifestation, what are you focusing on? That's why what you're thinking about is so important, and to be aware of that.
So really, you're just kind of gradually thinking it into existence. I actually function in a very similar way in terms of how I manifest things.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. All right. See if there's anything else I wanted to cover on that. Should we talk a bit about mana and Makia and Aka and kind of how that enters into manifestation? We're kind of breaking it down in a little bit more detail. In terms of like
So mana is a Hawaiian word that is basically translated as a kind of power, and the esoteric translation is all power comes from within. That's a big thing to say. All power comes from within. And what that is, and another word for mana is authority, which means our inner authority. And in that word authority is the word author, to author our lives. So the idea behind mana is that and the reason why we have to pull ourselves away from the overculture and from everyone else's, all the shoulds and the oughts and what mom thinks and what dad thinks and what society thinks, is because our own inner essence is the only thing that we need, that is the directive force for us to create our lives. And our mana, or our inward power, is the source that does that. And so the idea that nothing has power over you. Nothing has power over you. Is a really, really important concept, because if it does, it will override your own inner authority.
Oh.
And then you add to that, so that's mana, the inward authority. Makia is, again, where I'm placing a focus of what I'm paying attention to is creating and inviting in the creative energies of the universe to bring what I'm thinking about into existence and what I'm focused on into existence. And then Aka is a very quantum concept in Hawaiian spirituality, and the idea is that there is vast potential in space, and where we place our focus and attention, what we're thinking about, lights up the potential in that empty space, and is the essence of what it can become.
Yeah.
So if you think of that the space between you and I, there's great potential for it to become what our inward world projects and creates onto it.
Yeah. And, in expanded states of consciousness, I think it's interesting how empty space can be perceived. I mean, on the one hand, you can literally perceive it as nothingness, as like a void, there's nothing there. And then like the other side of the coin is, well, everything's there. It's like infinite potential. And so it's this idea of, you're describing, I think, the, ether or the fifth element. And that can be experienced directly.
Everything and nothing, everything and nothing. And I would even go as far as say that is the goddess. The goddess is all that is and all that isn't. The God, all that is. But the goddess is both, so it is the emptiness and the void, and it's also the everything.
Cool. And you also talk about the importance of charisma in magic and manifestation. And I mean, you seem like a guy with a fair amount of charisma. Can you tell us about that? Why is that important?
Well, what is charisma? Charisma is actually to be charismatic. That is a spiritual word, and that is really about if you want charisma, again, it's just love in the present moment. It's that's what that is, and it's a sense of and it's the realization that I'm supposed to be here, that I belong here, that I have a purpose, that I matter. Now, these things sound very simple, but I can't tell you, in my work in private practice, I can't tell you how much work it is and how much the theme of, that you matter, that you have a gift, that the gift matters. Do you know that you're special? Do you know that you're here for a reason? You know that if the universe didn't want you to be here, you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And to be in that that joy, and to be in that sense of this is my shot. Yeah, this is my shot in this body, in this persona, in this life. That's what to me, that's what charisma is.
And I find that a lot of people have a hard time with that. I mean, even repeating a simple affirmation such as, I deeply love and respect myself. People will often have a hard time saying that. They'll want to say it to themselves quietly, silently, or like barely audibly. Like to actually say it out loud is really something. And it's making magic. I mean, it's
the only we are a spark of the divine. We are all individually a spark of the divine. We are, and to think of sort of the traditional sky religions, this idea that we are originally sinful, that we are originally bad, that's all just meant to control. That's actually it's actually meant to get our money more than anything else. That's when you adhere to that, that's what you're doing. And but self-love is and there's a word in Hawaiian, Aloha ma, M-A, afterward, and Aloha ma means self-reflective love. And that is underneath everything in terms of anything that any legitimate spiritual path, that's the goal.
Yeah. Very cool. So tell us about your new Hemi-Sync album called The Shaman Within.
Yeah. Well, it was, I'm in private practice. I do spiritual counseling through a shamanic lens. And there are certain major themes that I saw, that I keep seeing and will continue to see with humans in this very busy, very full practice. And so I wanted to create meditations that addressed a lot of those themes.
Mhm.
And journeys that addressed a lot of those themes that are sort of universal to the growth process, the healing process, and even the process of living a spiritual life.
Mhm.
So that's what it was about. So on the album we look at a version of soul retrieval, which is where we send a part of ourselves away, usually in childhood, because we learn some misinformation about some part of us doesn't fit, and we take that back. There's a section on releasing attachments to other people, to non-beneficial relationships. There's a journey about just working with spirit guides. There's a journey about our energy system and working with the different programs in the body, in the chakras. So it was really just about like taking the major themes that I saw in private practice and giving them an essence, a sense of a thematic essence that people could follow. And then in that, there's so much more deeper to go with all of those things. But that was the idea, and I loved working with you guys. This was I also did an album, or not an album, but a class with your support underneath it as well.
Yeah, right. So that first piece is the Shaman Within. That's a Hemi-Sync album. You can get it on the Hemi-Sync website. The next one is the Shaman's Mind, right? This is a course you did with Glidewing that uses some Hemi-Sync.
Yeah, and that starts February 25th, and that's all recorded. So even if that's a 3-week course, and it's all recorded, so if you can't make it live, you can still play it back. So that starts February 25th, and that is a really deep dive into not only Hawaiian shamanism but shamanism in general, and with it not only a lot of didactic information, but also a lot of journeys and meditations with all the Hemi-Sync technology underneath it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then you've also got a Rewilding Workshop coming up.
Yeah, that's March 25th. You can find all this on my website, mindbodyspiritmaui.com, mindbodyspiritmaui.com. Yeah, and so the Rewilding Workshop is a lot of what we're talking about. It is about coming back to nature, turning down the volume on the overculture, really seeing what that is. We are, don't mean to be too depressing, but we are in an extinction event. We are in the Anthropocene extinction. This is really happening. And it is because we have turned our back. We have separated ourselves from the earth, the thing that sustains us, the thing that we need to keep going. It's a very cannibalistic and even sociopathic thing that is in the consciousness that we've done.
Yeah.
And rewilding is about returning to our own nature, returning to nature. And it doesn't mean living off the grid. It doesn't mean growing your own food. It's not that sort of thing. It's about a new burgeoning consciousness that includes the holistic outlook of the shamans, of the indigenous people, along with all the technologies and all of the things about modern life, and the new consciousness is emerging of those two. But we will not find our way forward if we just keep following what the culture is doing, because the culture is not well. The culture is founded now on a kind of narcissism that is very dangerous.
Yeah, and on extracting from nature.
Totally.
Until I can't give any more. Awesome. And so on social media, it looks like your main account is Instagram. You're Jonathan_Hammond_Maui.
Yep.
Anything else you want to shout out there?
No, that's you pretty much got it all. Yeah, and cool. If anyone is interested in working privately, that's the foundation of what I do is my private practice. I'm generally pretty full, but you can look on there. I have a whole bunch of offerings on there too, and I really work internationally. I have clients in Australia, clients in New Zealand, clients in Far East, clients in the mainland. So yeah.
Cool. Well, he is Jonathan_Hammond_Maui. We're at Hemi-Sync Life on Twitter and Instagram. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at Garrett H. Stevens. Do you have Twitter, John, or?
I'm not a Twitter guy.
Not a Twitter guy. Okay.
I'm actually not much of a social media guy. I'm
not either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not something that it's when you think of it's crazy about social media, and one of the things I deal with young people so much is the sense of that a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old or a 16-year-old is supposed to curate a public persona that says this is what I am forever,
Yeah.
and I feel so badly for them because social media, there's no sense of inward process, there's no sense of elderhood, there's no sense of it's okay that I'm not a master yet at whatever, and so it's really something that so it's not something that I really adhere to. I kind of think of myself as I'm kind of neighborhood witch, neighborhood shaman with an internet connection. That's how I think about it,
I like that.
Yeah.
Now that could be a whole separate podcast. But John, hey, thanks for joining us for this one. Be well. Thanks for doing this album with us, and looking forward to more in the future. Appreciate
Aloha.
it. All right. Aloha and mahalo. Thanks.
Thank you.